Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
And we're live. Friends from around the world, welcome to the Great Debate. Not a debate where both sides work to defeat one another, rather a debate where both sides come together to find common ground. That's what makes this debate great, and it's so good to have you here with us. Today, our favorite topic, Israel and Palestine. We have two very interesting guests. We're going to talk about the upcoming elections, the military apparatus in the West Bank, what we could do to move forward, and a whole bunch of other fun topics. As always, we're going to do an after party in Discord. Jesse, can you please toss a link in the chat for our friends for the Discord? If you're new to the page, subscribe. And if you like this video, give us that thumbs up. A shout out to our visionary Patreon members. We have Max Marine. We have Trivium Energy Pty. That's an energy company in Australia. And then we have SOG Cannabis. That's a cannabis company in California. Those are our Patreon visionary supporters. And a big shout out to our other patrons who support this show. If you want to become a patron, you can find a link to the description, a link to our Patreon in the description, as well as other ways to support us. All support is appreciated, and it really helps us on our goal to aid in the reconciliation process between people in conflict. Let's get this show on the road, friends. Eliran, Zahir. Eliran, what happened to your camera? Okay, well, you know, Zahir is anonymous anyway, so we will grant you the right to not turn your camera on if you want. But you're a quite handsome young man, so, you know, I'd like for people to see you. Up to you.
Oh, yeah. Wait. All right, here.
There we go.
I tried to plug in my AirPods, but I cannot find the way to do it.
Oh, you can work on it a little bit. I'm going to give the floor to Zahir first anyway, so you could deal with it. You'll actually see a little like cam mic button on the bottom. Click that, and then you can change the settings. Anyways, to my top left, we have Eliran Ben Yair. He's an Israeli. He's been involved in peace building since he was 12 years old. So he's more experienced than most people I've ever met in this space. To my top right, Zahir, the mystery man, a Palestinian working to end the status quo. It's great to have you both here. Zahir, before we get started, maybe you just want to explain to the audience why you're anonymous, because I have seen people ask this, so I'd like for them to know.
Sure. I mean, it's not, you know, that dramatic. It just means it's easier to speak freely, particularly when talking about political, you know, matters. I'm not like publicly, you know, an activist or anything. This is something I like commenting on. So yeah, it allows me to be more honest, I guess, with my thoughts, and means I have less trouble at the border each year. so yeah, it makes things a lot easier, and it means I can sort of comment on political things in a way where, you know, I don't have to really worry about trying to please anyone in particular. I can just sort of speak my mind on what I think is really, you know, really happening, or what people really think.
Great, and that's important because your perspective is always appreciated. And just so the viewers know, I do know Zahir's real identity, so I can confirm who he is and that he is in fact a Palestinian and not some imposter. Great, so let's get this show on the road. Palestine balls. I see that you're saying Zahir's going to destroy Eliran. There's not going to be any destroying on this show. That's not what we're all about. This is the great debate, not just a debate. So, you know, no need to instigate. But you are our dude. We like you a lot. Anyways, let's get started. I want to start by just giving people an overview of the situation, you know, where we currently are. What are your thoughts on the present situation, on the status quo? Eliran, take the floor first, all you.
All right, so first I'll start with introducing my personal views. I define myself as an Israeli Jew Zionist. My Zionism comes from me figuring out my identity as an Israeli Jew. Since I was a little kid, I was very interested in looking for the past events that happened to my people throughout history, culture, language, music, a lot of different aspects that built my identity around this, let's call it Zionist identity. My view on the conflict in these days is that peace, which is kind of the main goal of both sides, hopefully, is something that is very achievable because it's something we have here on the ground. I mean, I have many great Palestinian friends and many great Israeli friends. We're hanging out together. We're going to each other's houses. On a daily basis here in life, everything is pretty good. What people don't understand is that what they see in the media is mainly the extreme cases, the cases that are basically recorded, the cases that are more interesting. I mean, it would be much more interesting to show someone the argument of a Palestinian with a soldier in a checkpoint than showing him me and my friend walking out and going to a movie. And that's mainly, in my opinion, what creates this gap between what actually happens to what people think that happens. It's a mixture of assumptions with some knowledge, and then comes the media, who kind of changes everything. And yeah.
Thank you, Eliran. Zahir, are you a friend?
Let's get some echo. Yeah, so I think in terms of, first of all, I resonate to some extent with what Eliran is saying in the sense that I don't think the people's ability to get along is necessarily, the issue, in the conflict. I think in terms of, look, the reality is, if the political situation was different, there is actually remarkably more in common, culturally, in terms of connection to the land and the history. There's actually tremendous overlap of culture. I think, even there's significantly more, Arab or Mizrahi, let's say, influence in Israeli society than most Palestinians assume, or the just similarities in general. Like the two, I don't really fear the two people's ability to get along. Beyond that, with that said, the status quo today is basically, I think, on the Palestinian side, it's never been more hopeless. So, and on the other hand, nothing's really changed. So, post sort of Second Intifada, you have increased shift to the right inside of Israeli politics. The right in Israel being, sort of security, minded, and less about the conflict, to the point where I think basically the Israel-Palestine conflict isn't really particularly important inside of Israeli politics, or it's like sort of not issue number one, and it's generally spoken about through a lens of security. On the other hand, the situation on the ground inside the West Bank hasn't really changed, and in a lot of ways, it's gotten a lot worse. And so I think we're in this weird equilibrium, weird political equilibrium on both sides, where there's not really an incentive to change anything politically, and you can shuffle the deck as many times as you want, but unless something fundamentally changes in the approach our politicians take, I don't see a way forwards that's going to change anything. So that's probably my summary.
Thank you. Any follow-up to that, Eliran, or should I move forward with more questions?
Yeah. It's just a short one. And yeah, I think that the status quo is something that should be changed. Right now in the Israeli society, there are so many, let's say, disputes between groups of people, between the right and the left, between the secular and Orthodox, between other groups, minorities. And it kind of reached the point which in the Israeli society has more problems in the inside than the outside. And people tend to forget this huge conflict that is surrounding us for over 70 years right now. So basically what most people do right now here is focusing on their daily lives, going to work, their studying career, the army, their girlfriend, their daily routine, basically, because the conflict is a bit far from many of us.
So how do we hold on, Eliran, we got echo. I got you. So how do we reignite some kind of a movement to actually change the status quo. You both bring up a very good point that Israelis don't have much reason to act. Our lives are comfortable enough. We're not reminded of the conflict on a day-to-day basis. Once in a while, when there's war or terror attack, we are reminded, but life goes back to normal fairly quickly. Palestinians, on the other hand, are reminded daily, yet they often feel powerless to do anything about it. So how can we really reignite some movement towards changing the status quo, which we all agree is unsustainable and undesirable for all of us?
So I'll start off by saying that there are many gaps between the societies that should be improved. One of the things that bothers me the most is the lingual gap between Israelis and Palestinians. The lingual gap is a very major part when it comes to knowing each other, because I believe that those who speak two languages and more here, who watch us and even us here, can understand that the more languages you speak, the better you can know other sides. Me, as a Jew, practicing my Arabic a lot. I believe that learning Arabic and speaking Arabic, speaking to someone in his native language, will be much easier for me and for him to accept each other. I believe that if Israelis will be fluent in Arabic, and if Palestinians will be fluent in Hebrew, it will be much easier for them to learn the other perspectives, the history of the other side, and also to get some of the mentality that people has, because there are a lot of differences in mentality, in set of minds, and these differences are eventually the causes to these huge gaps. Another major part is basic understandings of things that people cannot have. Let's say the gap of knowledge that Palestinians has about the army, and the gap of knowledge that Israeli civilians has about what happens in the territories, in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank. Many Israelis don't really understand what happens in the West Bank right now, with soldiers, with Palestinians, with people who get arrested, and with a lot of tensions that exist in the area. And on the Palestinian side, as a youth who met thousands of different Palestinians from all around the world, including Gaza and the West Bank, I can tell you 100% that I never met even one Palestinian who actually has a satisfying amount of knowledge about the army. And it makes sense, because every person who's been to the army can actually approve that the army hides his classified information. They don't want the other side to know it as good as Israelis know it. And this creates the gap, because eventually the fighting sides are not the Israeli civilians and the Palestinian civilians. And it's not the Israeli army against the Palestinian army. It's the Israeli army against the Palestinian people. And these two groups don't have enough connections and capabilities of knowing each other good enough as we know it. Because if the Palestinian civilians would have the connection we have with as civilians with Palestinian civilians, everything could be much easier. When they used to see soldiers, they usually see them as war machines, and it creates a lot of tensions in terms of, let's say you're crossing the checkpoint. When you're a Palestinian, when you see a soldier, you either get mad or afraid. When I'm an Israeli and I see a soldier, I straight ahead feel much more safe in the bus, in the streets, in the mall, anywhere. And these gaps are major gaps that without fixing them, peace or status quo won't change anytime soon.
Thanks, Eliran. So, I really think you touched on something very important, learning each other's language and learning each other's narrative. I think it's one of the single best ways to really reconcile with one another. Zahir, I'm going to guess that you definitely agree with that, but you don't get extremely excited about that, because that is a long process solution, and Palestinians feel a sense of urgency that we don't. Do you get that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, sort of like, I hear everything Eliran's saying about like culture and understanding and stuff, and I think like that would play a role. It's just, I don't think that these bridges can be built with the situation that it is now, just because of the tremendous difference in the way people's lives are. So, and I think so much of it is political. So it's like when I think that's why it's hard to look at it from the perspective of two individuals. So I can look at it from the perspective of talking to Eliran and like what he thinks and like how he feels about the conflict. But like I see it as so much more political. Like ultimately, the status quo exists because it's in Israel's interests to keep it that way. It's sort of like the a permanent temporary solution. There's no real push inside of Israeli politics for there to be a Palestinian state. It's also ideologically it contradicts different people inside Israeli society that want to be able to live in the West Bank and don't even believe in partition. And the same exists in Palestinian society. Plenty of Palestinians, I'd say, only like 40% are really even on board with the two-state solution, and then sort of the majority either doesn't know or disagrees with it ideologically because they don't believe in dividing the land either. So there's the fact that there's no real political pathway forwards, and then in the meantime, the current situation is just ideal for Israeli politics. You can kind of keep the settlers happy. You can keep. It's also part of the nature of the coalitions. Bibi's coalition with sort of different parties inside of Israel. So far, the status quo is the best way to satisfy that without really messing anything up. If you fully go all in and annex everything, then there could be an intifada or international pushback. It could be more expensive. It's more expensive to control the territories the way it was pre-First Intifada, for example. And with more pushback from the Palestinian side. Or you can go the other direction, withdraw, and then there is a Palestinian state, and that pisses off, doesn't really provide a solution for the Israelis living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem and stuff. So it's kind of politically stuck between a rock and a hard place. And there's no real pathway forwards there. And then when you talk about, when you get to the individuals, like their inability to build, bridges between the two sides exists because of this tremendous difference in the way people live. Like the situation is really hopeless. If you're growing up in the West Bank right now, you're in university, you're basically just thinking, what do I do next? Where am I going to make an income? Where am I going to make a living? If I go overseas, then I have a potential future. My family's home, and I'm going to eventually have to come back, and I'm going to get a degree in something I can't work in. The level of unemployment is insanely high. So people kind of need an answer, and they need it now, or they need to at least feel like there's a framework for hope. A framework for a way forwards. Otherwise, people just don't engage. The conflict isn't a popular subject in Israeli society. It's also not really a popular subject in Palestinian society. It's something that will make people roll their eyes. It's just like, oh, we're talking about this again. The word peace doesn't resonate with Palestinians just because we don't even know what that means anymore. Like there isn't really an armed resistance, an organized armed resistance in the West Bank per se. At the same time, our politicians, what our politicians are pursuing is the same exact broken record for the last 20 years. So people don't even know what you're talking about, I guess, when you ask that question. And so really there is that tremendous gap. And then there's also, I think, and I think it does need to be bridged. I just don't really know how, because there is this sort of political issue without perhaps, like a political framework that addresses both sides from the start. There needs to be this kernel of hope in order for people to be willing to come to the table. I kind of need to feel like the person I'm talking to on the other side shares some aspect of a vision with me for what the future could look like in order for the bridge building to be worthwhile.
So what can we actually do? And I know we really started with the most challenging question. This is what we are all stuck on. This was even the final question I asked Noam Chomsky the other day, and it's true he didn't have much time, but even his answer, I feel like it wasn't adequate. What can actually be done to begin this process? What would it take for Palestinians to feel hopeful? What would it take for Israelis to be re-inspired to get involved? And I will accept the answer of I'm not entirely sure. That's completely legitimate because I don't think anybody really knows. I think it's one of the reasons we're in this place to begin with.
So first of all, I cannot speak on behalf of Palestinians, and also as an Israeli, I can say 100% sure that I cannot also talk about on behalf of Israelis because of the diversity we have in the political map. My view of a solution is too long for life period of humans. To me, I see peace as a very long process that cannot be made, at least not in my lifetime. Even as a youth, I don't think peace will come that fast. I think peace is a long process that will take the acceptance of each side, and it's a process that can take tens of years, coming over gaps which are rooted in us, combining foreigners who involve in it from all over the world and kind of changing the political maps, the views of people, influencing others, and causing more problems. I don't think that I have a vision to a full solution. I don't think that any political step that the Israeli government can take in these days will change anything. I think that annexation is bad as much as not using the annexation. Like both will still create a bad reality for people. It's either like going to intifada or either going with a status quo who also kills people. Just a matter of how strong these tensions will become. I think, as I said, that peace is a process. I don't think that any political steps will be those who will create it. I think that peace is a process that should come first with people, with rooting this sense of living together, with knowing this sense of knowing each other better since we're young. Because I can say about myself that even though I consider myself as an open-minded person, while growing up, I was very, very, very afraid of Arabs. And it doesn't come from brainwash or anything. My mother is leftist. My mother is leftist. My father is rightist. My father is working with Arabs, with Palestinians, even during the Intifada, when there was like lockdowns in the West Bank. He used to go to the borders to give them food, money, and sit with them to drink coffee and everything because they're like their family. But I was afraid of Arabs because of the reality, because of things that were rooted in me throughout random people I saw, throughout some passwords people stream all the time in demonstrations, throughout the things I saw in the media. I mean, imagine how terrifying it is growing up and seeing like, I just call them Arabs, not Palestinians or anything. It was like a huge generalization of a group of people, but I was terrifying seeing the terrorist attacks, seeing pictures from the Intifada, hearing the alarms of the rockets from Gaza, running to the shelters every time, even at school times. And it causes a deep fear that is rooted in me. And I believe that anyone who lives in disputed areas like Israel and Palestinian territories or any other place on earth can understand that fear is the number one cause to hate. And with the years, these things can be either developed to a huge trauma or to a huge hate towards the other side. And I think that when I personally look at a solution to this, I think it's something that should be rooted from the beginning with knowing each other better, with kind of coming over these gaps and fears. With Israelis, I can tell that from the Israeli perspective, many Israelis who hear Arabic, for example, in the streets, for them, it's like a secretive language. It's something very terrifying to them to hear this because they don't know what they're speaking about. And whenever they hear Arabic, it's usually in bad terms. When they connect Arabic, like in their mindset, it's something that happens like without their decision. They connect Arabic to terror, to violence, and to other scary things that make them feel more scared. I had this when I was younger. When I used to go on the bus and I used to hear someone speak Arabic before I spoke Arabic. Now I speak Arabic, so I'm not afraid of it. But when I was young and I used to hear someone speak Arabic in the bus or in the streets, I always get terrified straight ahead. And these are the things that are rooted in us on both sides. I believe that Palestinians, when they walk in the streets and they see a soldier, they had this itchy feeling of something bad might happen, this small fear of what could happen. And that's what we have on the other side. It's this small feeling that we think that it will be okay, but if this soldier would do something, if this Palestinian would do something, I'm not sure what will happen. And that it causes a lot of trust issues among the fighting sides. So if you're looking at a solution to it, I think it's something that should be rooted from the beginning. Something is like coming over the lingual gaps, coming over the cultural gaps, knowing each other better. I don't think that living together is also a bad option. Like mixed cities like Haifa or Lod or Ramle in Israel has this model, and it's something that works. People live together. People who live in Haifa can tell you for sure that it's much easier for them to feel more connected to the Arabs, and vice versa, basically. Um, and I also think it will strengthen our identities as people, because when you live together with others, but it also helps you to learn better your identity. When I started flying abroad, and when I started meeting people from other identities and cultures, to speak in different languages, to challenge my narrative, I started connecting more to my identity, which is something that people are fear of. They think that if they will go living with others, or to other places and connect to others, they will lose their identity. And in my case, for example, it just strengthened it more and more and more. So it's a long process. It's not something that can be made in one lifetime. I don't think that it's something that I will witness growing up, but I think it's something I can build as a teenager. And I believe that in the future, this process of knowing each other and kind of rooting it in people's minds, this will be one of the things that will lead in the far future to a solution.
Thank you, Eliran. Listen, you have a little bit of pinging in the background. It sounds like there's some notification bell on. So if you could shut that off, please, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's from the Discord.
Okay, yeah. So close that. Yeah. Thanks. Zahir, all you, man.
Sure. I mean, I'll break down my answer into two sections, on the personal level and on the political level. So I think there is a way forwards on both sides, and the two are interconnected. On the personal level, the hard part here is I don't know how much. It's very difficult to again build bridges or get to know each other better with the situation the way it is now. So it's one thing for Palestinians with Israeli citizenship in Haifa to get to know their Jewish counterparts, or overseas. So I could be at a university abroad and get to know an Israeli as a person outside of the context of the political reality. But on the ground, it sort of feels kind of like it's sort of an Uncle Tom thing. I mean, there's this power asymmetry where you have more rights than I do, when I'm speaking to like my Israeli or Jewish counterpart, and it's your state that is responsible for effectively dominating every aspect of my life. And I think the extent to which Israeli politics and kind of this democracy that we're not part of affects our lives isn't something I think most Israelis are aware of. So it's everything down to my ability to transfer money, set up a company, my freedom of movement, my ability to if there is trouble in a particular area, I know there's going to be a raid the following day. I won't be able to sleep because I'm going to get a knock. Someone's going to knock on my door. Ability to move at night. Sometimes there's curfews. I mean, you're basically living in this super militarized presence constantly, and from a very young age, those are the interactions that you have with soldiers, and that's what you know of the other side. So Eliran talks about being afraid of Arabs. It's like from a very, very young age, there's an awareness of the presence of soldiers. And I kind of lived through the second Intifada, and that's something everyone's sort of deeply aware of. The imagery is very deeply embedded in your mind. You see an Israeli flag, you think soldiers. Kids being shot at protests during the second Intifada, neighborhood kids who were picked up by soldiers and kind of used to go door to door knocking as human shields, and they kind of left with that trauma. Or the fact that it kind of feels like they're like police, but they're not your police, so you can be stopped at any time and can ask for your ID, and then you have no idea what the hell is going to happen. And most experiences are fairly mundane, nothing really happens. But then you have a handful of those experiences where something does happen, so you can never really predict. If you interact with a soldier, how's it going to end? I don't know. It could end with him. It could end normally, and most of the time it does, or it could end with me, in the getting arrested or copping a beating. So you have this sense of being under a military apparatus, and there's no real way to escape from it. There's no future. You can't really build because it's going to get knocked down later. I can't build a business. I can't. I don't. So many people want to contribute to their country, and they feel like they can't because so much of their efforts will just be wasted. And there's this tremendous brain drain out of the region where if you're talented, if you have any skills, you sort of have to leave. And then when you're basically trying to build bridges with the other side, it's very difficult to do that within the context of this sort of reality. And so you need to feel like the person you're talking to is an ally in this, and so it becomes political. So you have one of two choices: either you have a fake interaction, a fake, friendship, where you like put aside the truth of the political situation, just talk to each other as people, but it can never really go. It can never really go very deep, or you're on the same page about the future, and then you kind of feel like the person you're talking to is an ally. But that is present. And a lot of Palestinians pre-COVID would work in the West Bank, so they deal with Israelis, on construction sites and stuff, and they can see that humanizes the other side, like dealing with someone on a construction site or a business rather than, as a soldier. That definitely humanizes the other side. But on the other hand, there's still the same asymmetry. He's your boss. He's not your friend, and so you're being polite. But there is still this context of, almost like ethnic supremacy that you can feel. Like, if he's nice, he's talking down to you. So it can be quite a patronizing relationship. And the only way I see around that is probably the political answer, which is, I think Israeli politics, for the most part, isn't going to be the source of change, or is unlikely to be the source of change, simply because it's reacting to the Palestinian side at this point. There is relative stability, there is a relative equilibrium inside Israeli society, and so many different opinions that it's Palestinians who are going to have to trigger that change. So on the Palestinian side, I feel we need to stop repeating the same stuff we've been repeating for the last 20 years. I think for some bizarre reason, our current political, leadership seems to think that they're going to go overseas to the UN or to these foreign powers, and the UN is going to impose some kind of a solution on us. Well, on the other hand, inside Israeli politics, they're basically saying shmoom. Well, this is not. It is never going to be the source of a solution. I think Palestinians need to form a new, political movement, and I think that political movement needs to actually address the electorate on the other side, because their politicians are going to respond to their electorate. Our politicians should be speaking directly to Israeli voters. We should be building a coalition around everyone else on the other side, whether it's Arab Israelis or Jewish Israelis who believe in the same, basically believe in equality, I guess, or who recognize the humanity of the other side, and build the largest possible coalition to do that. And so, I think there is a need for a new political movement, or at least a change in strategy, and a change in the mindset, rather than repeating the same tried old mantra that we've done for the last 20 years. And I think that will influence the personal side of it. Because there's so many big ideological differences. I mean, very early on, Eliran introduced himself as an Israeli and a Zionist. Like, to Palestinians, Zionist is the worst possible word, and yet I know it means something different to the average Israeli. But to us, it's based on the history of Zionism, and that's sort of a much longer conversation. And I guess the fundamental, like, what we see ultimately is like Zionism to Palestinians is interchangeable with Jewish supremacy. Over this particular region. And I know that's not what it means to a lot of Israelis, or really for a lot of them, it's just like interchangeable with that nationalism, or, I live here and this is the term that represents me living here. But I think there's these ideological differences. And so when you create some kind of a political movement that represents an ally on the other side, now you know that if someone's part of that movement, that term, then it makes it easier to then build connections afterwards, because that, I guess, that they are for your freedom, or they are for your equality, or they are for your rights as a human being. So, I think that's probably something like that is the way forwards.
Well, thanks, Zahir. Just to kind of, build off what you both said and kind of give a little more hope, because, Eliran, you said that peace might not even be attained in our lifetime, and that might not even be pessimism. That might just be realism. I'm definitely open to that idea. I think when Palestinians hear that, it's much harder for them to accept, because the status quo is unbearable. So I don't think it has to be zero sum, even if it takes decades for us to get to the state of kumbaya between our people. There's still a lot we could do to change the status quo quite immediately, and I'm going to share in the link right now. It's 8 steps to shrink the conflict. There's a new NGO called Shrinking the Conflict Initiative. I believe that's what they're called in English. And they're really focused on pragmatism. They say, look, we don't have all the solutions, but let's try to do what we can to improve the lives of the Palestinian people, because this we can do. I could read it. Do y'all want to hear it real quick? Or are you interested? Yeah, let's just put this out there so people know what we're talking about. Hold on. Ease the travel abroad, so make it much easier for Palestinians, A, to come into Israel proper and to travel abroad. Increase employment amongst Palestinians in Israel. That will help their socioeconomic condition. Land reallocation. I'm not going to read off all the details, so I'm not quite sure what this means. No settlement expansion. With settlement expansion comes also a greater military presence, which is a form of collective punishment. International and local trade. Economic independence. So I put a link in the comments so you all can see, but there are things we can do immediately to really shrink the conflict. And at the very least, we should be doing that.
I'm kind of 2 minds about that sort of thing. I mean, on the one hand, like no Palestinian's going to complain about any of those things. And that sounds good. I think it might ease the tension. It might make it easier to, like, I think whenever there is, a clash, that definitely makes, engage, the politics more complicated. But I'm not sure if I buy that, peace will never, how long a process it is. I guess, maybe depends what you mean by peace. If you mean like genuine sort of people being okay with each other on both sides, then yes, I think that's almost a generational process. As far as what people want in the immediate time, it's like a political solution. It's a political solution, and it goes hand in hand with the personal stuff. So similar, kind of like when Eliran was talking earlier. I think about sort of like having friends in the West Bank and Gaza, and just like how easily they get along. Is what it's like. As soon as there's the trust in the person that you're talking to, that they actually share the same sort of vision that you do. Again, that they believe in your equality, then the next part comes really quickly. Like people get along really fast. Like you build these connections really quickly. So I see it in similar ways to like the civil rights movement, other political movements between like 2 different groups. I know it's not the same sort of situation, but it's a similar kind of like timeline and parallel. It takes a decade. It takes a very long time, but when it begins, it's begun. There's a momentum that starts to escalate. And as long as the kernel, like what we need to see soon is the beginning of that movement. It can take a long time to be fulfilled, but the hope builds as the movement grows and the rhetoric changes on both sides. People start speaking differently about the other. But the seeds of that movement has to happen, and it has to happen soon, because I don't think the status quo is sustainable, and I don't think the average Israeli who really has any idea how tense it is in the West Bank. Like, look at like Mukhayyam Balata or Ras Al Ain or Mukhayyam Jenin. Like, there's so many clashes between Palestinian security and the people. The tension is extraordinarily high, and the whole thing can erupt at any time. So I don't think the status quo itself is sustainable. So people should leverage that, the relative ease of engaging right now, in order to start the seeds of this movement. And that's what will give people hope. Like, people don't want half measures. So if you tell people, let's reduce the conflict, on the Israeli side, they worry that any reduction of the military apparatus will lead to more attacks and worsen security situation. And then on the other hand, on the Palestinian side, we don't think it's enough. We want to know, we want the real fundamental issues addressed. Like, when will we be actually free? When will we have genuine self-determination? And so it's all half measures. It's like, we'll make your economy a bit better. I remember, like, before the Second Intifada, a lot of my family in the diaspora returned and stuff. And then basically, since then, it went to shit, and they all had to leave again. You couldn't find work. You couldn't stay afloat. And there's a fear of that, another process where everyone's hopes are built up and then it just kind of dies again. And so people want a real answer, and they don't want to be strung along for another 5-10 years, another Oslo type process. there is just an ideological shift that needs to occur at the kernel of this movement. And even if it doesn't reach its conclusions, even if it's not, fulfilled for a very long time, that's what will give people hope. It'll give them something to put their anger and their, get like to get their catharsis through. Because people want to do something, they just don't know what to do right now.
So let's talk about something that potentially could really, maybe potentially bring change. We both have elections. Hopefully, we both have elections, right? Israel is leading the world in startups per capita, in vaccines per capita, and in elections. Will be our fourth election in 2 years, I believe. Eliran, are you hopeful that something positive might come out of this election? I also realize that you might have something to respond to what Zahir just said. So if you do, feel free to take this opportunity as well.
Yeah, first of all, it will be my first time voting, which is extremely funny because my next time voting was supposed to be in 2 more years, I think. It's a bit funny to me and my friends. I already have friends who voted 3 times. Wherein my classmates already voted 3 times. Those who are a bit older than me. So it's kind of a joke in the Israeli society right now that there are 18 years olders who voted more than 25 years olders. I don't think a change will come with the elections. First of all, we're supposed to have elections on both sides. Also on the Palestinian side, they promised to have elections. But I'm very pessimistic about it. It's like, as I mentioned, the trust issues we have on both sides. So, in my views, it's either like Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, will stay in power, or just like as me and Zahir said, we had a conversation earlier. It's just like either Mahmoud Abbas will stay, or either like something worse will come, someone worse. It's hard for me to believe that the elections on the Palestinian side will change something. But on the other hand, on the Israeli side, I also feel the same. I don't think that any diplomat will come right now, especially from the options we got here, that can change anything. I don't think that one of the people who are supposedly going to be our next prime minister has the abilities to change something in our society and in the conflict. And it's a bit sad that I'm a young guy. I'm supposed to be a bit more optimistic, but I'm very pessimistic when it comes to these things. Yeah.
Thanks, Eliran. I still remain hopeful in all your pessimism, but you're expressing the majority opinion, so it's important.
I always say that pessimistic people are just optimistic people who already learned
Potentially. I'm a slow learner, so give me some time. Zahir, Palestinian elections, about time. Is it gonna go through this time?
There is tremendous uncertainty around the Palestinian elections. I don't think anybody really knows what's going on. Just the other day, Hamas and Fatah seemed to basically agree on some basic terms in terms of an electoral court and how they're going to go by adjudicating the election. That said, they have done that before. They've done this whole process before. So I'm not entirely convinced this time will be different. I don't think most people are. So there's still a possibility the elections don't even happen. And there's also the case of East Jerusalem, which I'm not clear on. I think that may require Israeli approval. And if they don't get it, then they can just not have the election and blame it on the other side. So that's also a possibility. If the elections do go through, I don't see. I mean, the best case scenario that Palestinians may be hopeful for is less division. So an end to the Inqisam, we say. But I'm not optimistic about that either. I really think it is most likely going to be more the same. Abbas said he wasn't going to run. Here he is. He's going to run. Most likely, we will probably end up with the exact same, more or less the exact same leadership. Potentially, greater cooperation between the two parties, but I'm not convinced that that will be the case either, for the same reason that there wasn't any in the past. There's very, very, very big differences there. So yeah, I'm not particularly optimistic. In case people aren't aware, so we have 3 elections coming up. Basically for the different aspects of. So we have a presidential election, but we also have one for the legislative and for the PNC, the Palestinian National Council. So there could be some shuffling in other aspects of Palestinian politics, not just the president, but for the most part, I think people aren't optimistic about it. It's almost a joke. I mean, most of the people I've spoken to, we're not really super clear, even like who the candidates are going to be and what's going to happen, who's going to run. So yeah, I'd say similar thing. Again, like people, I am hopeful about a solution to the conflict. I'm just not hopeful that it's going to come from our present political apparatus. I think you can shuffle the decks as many ways as you want. You're just going to get the same. You're not going to get a better outcome. So you need a new card to play. Something fundamentally new needs to occur. A new kind of political movement. With the cards the way they are, I don't really see anything changing.
Who else is a contender? Is there a chance that we have someone besides Mahmoud Abbas?
Yeah, I mean, there's other. Well, again, we don't know. we don't know who the potential candidates are going to be as of yet. But it's possible. I mean, there's other potential leaders people would like. I mean, there's popular figures like Marwan Barghouti, who's in prison right now, who's been mentioned before, but I think it's all very unlikely. It's not clear who's going to be running inside the presidential elections. The candidates are yet to be advised. It's not clear. I know Jihad Islami is not going to be able to be in politics, but it's not clear if the other parties will be. The PFLP, the DFLP, Third Way, etc. So much of it is unknown. I would still say that the election even happening is an unknown. But we're kind of taking it a day at a time. There was the announcement the other day in Egypt that Fatah and Hamas had arrived at an agreement with regards to how they're going to run the election and who the electoral cases court will be, and free campaigning and voting and whatnot. So we have our legislative election in May and a presidential one in July. But I think in the PNC election in August or something. But not much more information other than that. It's not clear how they're going to handle East Jerusalem. It's not clear whose forces are going to sort of like protect and guard voting sites. I believe it's going to be sort of Palestinian police. But I don't know how that will work in East Jerusalem. So the whole thing is sort of full of uncertainty.
I hear you. Well, let's hope for the best. What do you all think about foreign intervention? How do you think that could play a positive effect? I know that people are split. Some people view foreign intervention as potentially the only way, and others view it as a hindrance to peace, getting in the way. What are your opinions?
All right. So first of all, this theme of foreign intervention in this conflict is something that burns inside of me for years now. It's one of the things that makes me mad the most, seeing people discussing about this conflict and thinking they know it so good while their knowledge is very funny, and I'll explain. Many people think that they're very objective because they're not connected to both sides, that their opinions are not biased, they're not influenced by each of the sides, so they can be objective. But to me, I define objectivity in completely different terms. I think that those who are objective in this conflict are specifically those who knows both sides good enough, who are connected to both sides good enough. I believe that someone who can be objective to this conflict cannot be a foreigner. I believe that someone who's very objective to this conflict should be one of us. And I believe that choosing between the sides for him will be like choosing between his mother and father. This is objectivity to me. I think that objectivity should come from someone who cannot give up on one of the sides and who doesn't want to harm both sides, but on the other hand also knows both sides and connected to them and lives with them and speak the same language and has the same mentality. And it's always very funny to have these discussions with foreigners because their opinions are absolutely beautiful. Some of them say very smart things. Some of them are very interested in this conflict and they're trying to learn it very hard, and it's impressive, and I'm very happy for it. But as I always say, their opinions are important, but doesn't count. There are a lot of things that they miss, a lot of things that they don't know, a lot of things that they can't know about both sides. What they see in the media, what they read, the articles, the opinions they get from others, and their basically narrative are not facts. There are no facts in this conflict. There's a reality which you feel, which you experience, and each side gets it differently. It's very easy to watch a video of a soldier do something, or it's very easy to watch a video of Palestinians do something and just like create a narrative around it. People are not challenging themselves enough. People are building their narratives, and it's not a coincidence. I mean, if it makes sense that if you grow up in an area that is more pro-Palestine, you'll be pro-Palestine. If you grow up in an area which is more pro-Israel, you'll be pro-Israel. People are not challenging themselves enough, and those who challenge themselves are basically going towards the bias way of it, and not towards the shared way. People tend to take one side without understanding that in order to be objective enough, you cannot choose a side here. You should work together. But also, it's to me, it seems like it's almost impossible to be objective, fully objective. The best thing you can do in order to so-called be as much objective as possible is knowing your limits. I have 3 Israeli and 3 Palestinian friends, which I'm very connected to. All 6 of them speak fluent Hebrew, English, and Arabic. They researched the conflict also for years, and they're very wise people. All three Palestinians and all 3 Israelis, they're very, very wise people, and they know their limits very well. And these are, for me, the most objective people, and I'll explain what limits mean. To me, limits means knowing what you know, what you can know. But it means that whenever you get to a topic there are things that are very classified to your side that the other side knows better, instead of arguing about them, you ask. For example, whenever me and my Palestinian friends are talking about the army, which is a subject that they know that there are a lot of information that is very classified for them, but not for me as an Israeli, and also as an Israeli who's joining the army soon. They ask questions. They're not assuming, because assumptions to me are the worst things people can do in this conflict in order to so-called help it. And that's what foreigners usually do. They assume. They assume they know better. They assume they know the army. They assume they know the Palestinian culture, the Israeli culture, while they don't even speak the language. They start giving us some religious quotes. They're giving us some quotes from the Bible, from the Quran, even though they cannot speak Hebrew or Arabic. They don't understand the complexity of these things. The differences between what they think they know and what they actually know. And I think that knowing your limits is something very, very important. I think that foreigners cannot help in this conflict. They might give temporary solutions that might somehow help. They can fix some things like economic problems or just like the small things that can be changed with money, mainly, not with the people themselves. But the real changes will never come from foreigners. And I believe that every Palestinian or Israeli, whoever had a conversation with a foreigner, can say 100% that they don't really know us. And those who won't, it's mainly because it's the nicest thing to hear someone from outside says things that fit your narrative. I mean, it will be the easiest thing for me to go to speak with an American Jew who says good things about Israel, even if they're not true, or even if I don't know them, and to say, yeah, this guy is right. I agree with him 100%. He's so smart. But it will be hypocrisy to me. I mean, I don't mind. I don't care if people like Israel or all the Palestinians. I don't care about Israel or the Palestinians as much as I care about the reality. And when we have this foreign intervention, I think that it will be the worst thing for me to support it, because then I will be this hypocrite who let others influence us, others who don't know us good enough. People don't, and it's something very clear. I mean, it's like the best example I usually give to people is, for example, if they're Muslim, I tell them, like, imagine you're walking down the street and then a white Christian guy from Europe comes to you and starts preaching to you about the Quran, even though he never read it, even though he doesn't speak Arabic, he never been to a mosque, he just learned it from the internet. Maybe his teacher told him something, he heard some rumors, some stuff, and he thinks he understands it so good because he read some articles. He might even read the translation in English, and same goes to Jews, for example. I got this a lot from people who start preaching to me about the Bible, about the Torah, and they think they're so smart, but they don't even speak the language. They don't understand the gaps. They don't understand the complexity of these books and stuff, and that can be interpreted to 1,000 different ways in each sentence and sentence. And the same goes here for the conflict. The conflict is to me as complex as the Quran and the Torah. It's something that can be interpreted to thousands of different ways. It depends. It really depends the place you was born, the language you speak, your culture, your mentality, the people surrounding you. It really depends the media you see. And foreign intervention, to me, is one of the worst things that can happen to us in this conflict.
Thank you, Eliran. By next time you come, we're gonna find a way to take care of that echo you got going. But yeah, Zahir, all you. But I just want to say we're closing in on an hour, and I do want to take a few audience questions and then get to final thoughts. So if you could keep it brief, I would greatly appreciate it. If chat, start asking questions. We'll probably do 2-3 questions, and then we're going to move it over to the after party.
Sure. I mean, I more or less agree with that. I think, yeah, the foreign intervention can be quite frustrating. On the one hand, I know why Palestinians, we like it, because it feels there's this power asymmetry. So if we can get a third party, to observe, or we can kind of complain to someone, then at least we have like some external power to assist us. If we can't do it ourselves, so getting assistance from other states feels like the only way forwards. But I think it largely pollutes the conversation. I don't think people understand it from the outside. I think it's very frustrating to hear on both sides. I mean, I find it just as frustrating the way, people advocating for us communicate our, identity, or what the hell is going on. So they have a role to play, obviously, but I think real change is going to come from the people on the ground. And I think so long as we're hoping for some foreign party to come in and intervene, change things, then nothing's ever going to happen. So yeah, I largely agree with everything Eliran said. I think it's impossible to really understand the situation unless you've lived it and seen it. And the people who should be speaking the most, or who need to be listened to, are the people on the ground.
Great. Cool. I'm not seeing the chat is very lively. It's been a wild chat today. I'll give 1 more minute for questions. In the meantime, I'll just give some afterthoughts. First of all, for those who don't know, we changed the name of the channel to Sulha. Sulha. How do you pronounce it in Is it here? I'm still not great
Sulha.
at the Sulha.
Sulha with a ha.
Sulha. In Hebrew, it's sulha. We use that word too. It means to reconcile or to make peace, but it is an Arabic word. It has the same roots as the Hebrew word slicha, which means sorry or excuse me. So it really shows our connection as a people, and it literally means what we're all about, reconciliation. The Great Debate is still a sub-brand, as you can see, but Sulha is really an encompassing brand that will include all of our activities, including our awesome Discord community, and the other new shows we've been working on. We do need a logo. If there's any graphic designers out there that want to help us with the logo, hit me up. My contact information is in the description. The guest contact information is in the description too if you want to get in touch with Eliran or Zahir. And yeah, let's hold on. There's some questions. How is anything but a two-state solution possible? Sorry, it's hard for me to multitask sometimes. I'm a man after all.
Sorry, can you rephrase it, please?
How is anything but a two-state solution possible?
Actually, it's a quite funny thing. I don't think that anything but a two-state solution is possible. I think that two-state solution is the best way possible. I don't think one-state solution will lead to true peace between the people. I think it will only strengthen the gap. And it comes mainly because of the splitting of the territories. I mean, this whole land is basically wholly for both groups, in religious terms, in ethnic terms, and it's something that is very hard to do. I mean, in two-state solution, sure, there would be the different splits of the land, but still, if we'll keep on a freedom of movement and we'll kind of make it look like there are no two states, it's like, I think it's a psychological trick that people should get. I think we got. It's funny that I'm saying it here instead of doing it, right? But I think it's something that people should do to us. They should psychologically kind of trick us. They should create two states, but they should make people feel that there's that this whole land belongs to them. That's it's mainly psychologically. I don't think that besides such psychologically tricking someone, we can actually solve it.
I hear that. Zahir, what are your thoughts?
I don't. It depends how you define two states. So, I mean, what Eliran's describing, where it's like two states that more or less seem like one, is sort of similar to. It isn't what a traditional two-state solution would look like. I personally don't believe in dividing the land. I don't. I'm from a tribe or a clan in a particular region in the West Bank, that happens to fall on the Palestinian side of a two-state solution. I don't know how me or Akbar Ras, what any leader has the right to then, on behalf of a different Palestinian who's from Akka or from Nasra or from Dir al-Saba, basically sign away a deal that says they can never come back to this place that they've lived in for a few thousand years. I don't believe in that ideologically. So the next question becomes governance. As far as governance is concerned, I think you have a need for separate governance, and this is where federal type solutions come in. You can design all sorts of federal solutions that create sort of parliamentary autonomy, or break the land down into different regions, and have state parliaments and then a federal government. I think there is so much that a joint government would have to administer, whether it's the borders, security. There's Jerusalem, so no Palestinian leader is going to be able to give up Jerusalem, or specifically East Jerusalem and the holy sites there. So there's going to be some. And at the same time, you can't build a wall there. So Jerusalem is this shared city for a start. Then there's a need for joint security there. If you take that idea and expand it, for the most part, you have almost everything in common. You have a need for economic unity, a need for joint border control, a need for freedom of movement, a need for So there's so many things that these two governments have to do in common that, to me, it looks more like a federation or some kind of a federal model than anything else. On the Palestinian side, there's basically been a bunch of key demands that people haven't really been willing to give up. So it's there's a connection to the land, and our politicians have in the past. Some of our politicians, except sort of the rejectionist front, have been okay with a two-state solution. But really, it's not so much about just the state or what the borders of that state are, as it is about the land itself, the connection to it. So my ability to go to Akka doesn't really, doesn't really interfere with Eliran's ability to go live in the West Bank. And so the need for the state to define, where people who have a connection to a particular spot can live, is sort of makes the conflict more complicated than it is. As soon as you have to think about trying to evacuate 800,000 settlers from the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and you look at how difficult it was to evacuate the settlements in Gaza, the whole thing becomes unrealistic and nobody wants to do anything about it. And also those 800,000 people are voters who have a big role to play in Israeli politics. And it's something that they'll never agree to. And they're a bigger group than ever. So, yeah, I think some kind of, a federal solution or something is probably the way forward. To some people, that sounds like two states, but to me, that sounds like one. Certainly like one state, like just make the Knesset bigger or make our Palestinian parliament bigger, and includes everyone. I think that's probably going to be a clusterfuck. But yeah, I think that's if you apply creativity, there's a lot of ways to set that up.
Thank you both. Right before we move to final thoughts, we're going to continue this conversation in the Discord for the after party. For those unfamiliar with Discord, it's an awesome place where we have conversations about all different topics. There's also a Zoom-like feature where we could have voice and video conversations, so that's exactly what it's going to be, and everyone can join in. You can contribute with voice, and if you don't feel like speaking, you can also type and contribute with text. We get wild in there. It's fun time, very inspiring. So I invite you all to come. I'm going to toss a link in the chat right now. And I just want to tell you all, one of the most important qualities we can have is the freedom of expression. So why don't we all take a moment and express ourselves with either an upvote or a downvote on this video. Express yourselves. It feels good. And really, it just tells the YouTube algorithm to push it out farther. So if you like this content, help us by giving it an upvote or a downvote. Yeah, final thoughts, Zahir, Eliran.
Final thoughts. I believe in peace. I truly believe in peace. I'm very pessimistic in terms of today's reality. I have enough reasons to be pessimistic because of them. I'm working towards change. I'm doing it with my Israeli and Palestinian friends, which I love very much and respect, and they respect me back. I do believe that peace will come one day. I don't think it will happen anytime soon. I don't think the governments will be those who can change it, but it should be something that will come from us, from the people. I had a great talk here with Zahir. Very happy to have it here. I'd love to do it again. We already had one before 2 days ago, so it was really nice too. And yeah, it just like finding the common grounds is very easy, as you see. Like we agreed upon many things here, so I'm very glad we had it. Very glad. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliran. It's been great having you.
Final thoughts for me. Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation, and I enjoyed our earlier conversation with Eliran. I think there is our leaders are very old, and there's when you talk to a younger generation, I think people have better ideas about the future, and so that's something that gives me hope. I think peace, like whenever Palestinians hear peace, it sounds so much like submission, because I think Israelis generally don't understand what really matters to Palestinians and what our priorities are. And I think, as Palestinians, we need to unify, realize that change isn't going to come from an international body or anyone on the outside. It's going to come from us, or at least take as much responsibility as possible to communicate our demands and our cause to everyone living in the land. These sorts of conversations are a great way to do that.
Thank you, Zahir. Thank you, Eliran. Dear brothers, this was fun. What I did not mention, once you join the Discord, you'll see on the left-hand side, it says lounge. click on Lounge and you'll be connected via voice. You don't need to speak, you don't need to show yourself, but you could at least hear the continued conversation.